as Wazoku. Thank you, Dino. We're known as Wazoku for our software platform. We have been providing software for over a decade to organizations looking to crowdsource ideas from their employees, perhaps from their ecosystem. But last year, we acquired a brand called Innovating. Innovating is a leader in open innovation and developed the open innovation, challenge-driven innovation methodology. One of the methodologies we're going to be talking about today, which is how do we take those big problems and then formulate those into challenges. Within Innovating, we've run over 2,500 open innovation challenges. So that's posting challenges out to a broad audience and our professional network of problem solvers, with an 82% success rate, meaning that when we've run a challenge out to an open crowd, in 82% of the cases, we've come back with a solution that the organization can then repurpose. So we have a crowd of around 500,000 registered solvers. And as I'll talk about in a little bit, these solvers are coming from all forms of backgrounds. So the approach is really, can we find solutions in areas that our organization typically wouldn't go looking? And can we really take big global problems, break those down into challenges, and find new and dynamic ways of coming up with solutions? So underpinning both Wazoku and Innovating as collective is our belief in the innate ability of humans, supported by technology, to solve any problem. We all solve problems on a daily basis. We are solving them on the way to work, we're solving them in the evenings, we're solving them in our day jobs. But it is a skill that most people, and I think it's all people harness, even if it's not obvious in our workplace. And what we really want to do is capitalize on that collective intelligence and that innate ability to be able to solve problems. And of course, there's never been a better time to innovate, never been a better time to be able to engage people in coming up with solutions to the world's biggest problems. Of course, 90% of scientists that ever lived are alive today. We've got proof from the last 18 months, as we've all seen, that those who dare truly win. We've seen innovation accelerate at a mass, be it from we aren't able to work from home to getting offices mobilized to working towards. We've seen what pharmaceutical companies have done, what the NHS has done. And we know that there truly is a bigger and better workforce as well to be able to help us. So work's distributed, there are lots of different people in lots of different fields who are able to help us collectively solve the world's biggest problem. But what we see time and time again is that our organization's capacity to innovate is bounded. It's bounded by our risk appetite, it's bounded by the specific needs of shareholders. It is in fact bounded by the people we even had in that organization, meaning that we go to the same group of people every time trying to find the answers to our problems and don't necessarily arrive at the correct solution. And what we want to do as a collective enabled by technology is truly unleash that capacity. So where can we think about and create that capacity to truly innovate sustainably at scale? And one of the first things around unleashing that capacity is really thinking about who is innovating. So typically organizations that we work with, and we're all very used to doing it, go either directly to the person next to us, or they might go more broadly to the smart people we employ. We go, this is the problem we're trying to solve. That's at the point if we admit that there is a problem, and these are the people who are going to come and solve it. And alongside that, we may innovate with our ecosystem. So it might be our partners, our competitors, suppliers, customers, but we're all part of these ecosystems and able to share innovation in between. But there is in fact a long tail. There is in fact a diverse global resources, as I said, of people who are able to solve problems, but they're typically too expensive for you to get to. And you'd have a hard time reaching them, because how would you know who has, in fact, the parallel or experience and skills to be able to help you solve those problems? And this is what we've really done over the last 20 years, is to think about how can we create a truly smart crowd of people from a really diverse set of fields to be able to come and think about your problems and provide solutions in a new way. So this can be anyone from someone who's retired in a field, it can be academia, it can be startups. But as I say, there's this huge network globally of problem solvers. And when we talk about unleashing capacity, it's really how can we tap into those people to be able to help us find solutions more quickly and more easily. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about a story about this working in practice, because it all sounds quite theoretical to this point. But this is a really great example in the sustainability field of actually where we've been able to help people find solutions and organizations find solutions in areas that they wouldn't typically find them. So zoom back to 2007, and this was in the aftermath of the Exxon Valdez oil spill. So there's over 120,000 litres of oil trapped in the Alaskan coastline. And the OSRI, the Oil Spill Recovery Institute, was set up to be able to both clean up this oil spill, but also think about new ways to, new technologies to prevent this happening in the future. So after deliberating and trying to solve this problem themselves, they had a challenge, and they recognized that there were multiple challenges that they needed to solve. But the first one is that they needed a method to get the oil water emulsion that had solidified into a viscose mass to flow up into their recovery barges. So what was happening is they were able to pump the oil water emulsion out, but it was actually solidifying. And they went around, typically to experts in the field, people they already knew, trying to find the solution to this problem. But actually they came to us and said, we really, really can't do it. So can you present this as an open innovation challenge? And let's think about what solutions exist outside of our typical field. And actually we posted it as an open innovation challenge and realized quite quickly that the winner, in fact, of this challenge through our process had no previous experience in oil recovery. So there's no way that the Oil Spill Recovery Institute would have ever found that person just by trying to solve the problem in that known network. In fact, the man who did win it was a bench chemist from Illinois. And in fact, the solution he came up with had nothing to do with his background in chemistry at all. He actually proposed using a technique which he had seen used in construction, whereby a vibrating metal rod had been put into concrete as it was being poured, which allowed the oxygen to come up through the concrete, and said, how about we use a similar approach in actually solving the OSRI's problem. So it was in fact an adapted method. It already existed, but it hadn't been repurposed or hadn't thought about being repurposed in the field that they were trying to use it in. So that really could be used, it could be repurposed, and ultimately the result was that the 30-year-old problem had been solved in only 2 months because the organisation had chosen to go out and think about a different crowd of people. Latterly, they came on and ran another 6 challenges or so with us, being able to, with the intent to really work out how can we come up with solutions from new areas. So that's just a bit of a story as to what can happen if you choose to go outside of your organisation to really solve problems. So part of this approach to how do we truly address the world's sustainability problems is thinking about who we're innovating with, and actually not always looking at the inside and the ecosystem, but trying to look in parallel fields. The second core component and the approach we very much advocate is actually the process itself, a process that we use called challenge-driven innovation. So when we're talking about challenges, we're talking about putting problems out to a crowd that matter. And that can be an internal or an external crowd. As I say, this isn't an attempt for us to say, come and use our software, because actually you've all got crowds of people and there are ways that you can do this. It's really about the process and the methodology as well. But when we're talking about challenges and about important problems, what we're also thinking about is what are the incentives through which we want people to, how do we incentivize people ultimately to contribute to these challenges? And us all running Ideas Scheme, we know that the most important thing to get right is how we message this and how we position this in a way that's appealing to our audience. The same is true for open innovation challenges as well. So regardless of who we're running this challenge to, Can we really understand what the problem is that we're trying to solve, and can we offer the right incentives? Now, when we're talking about open innovation challenges, in fact, it's the same for all types of challenges. What we really want to get people to cluster around is a boundary object. So that's creating a common frame of reference and language that diverse points of views can be shared and acted upon. So let's say we're taking the example of a car design. We would in fact say, you know, we don't want everyone to be thinking about the interior. Let's break down a challenge if we want to make and sell a better car, and think about what might the interiors look like, what might the exteriors, different parts of the engine, but really thinking that how do we make a better car, and involving and incentivizing the right people to come and contribute towards that specific area that we're looking to improve. Now, challenge-driven innovation as a framework, sort of our platform and customers who are with us today know it well. But what we're really trying to do, as I say, is take a really large problem and break that down into a portable unit of work, what we refer to as a challenge, and then expose that challenge to the right audience. That might be an internal challenge, it might be an external audience, to be able to find that solution in a very methodical way and make sure that organizations can really take this and use it every time that they want to be able to find a new solution. What is an approach we're trying to do is provide that methodology and those processes to enable repeatable value creation. So understanding what the problem is, breaking it down, and ensuring that we can get the right people to come up with the right solution in a repeatable and sustainable way. And this framework at large is really taking the principles both of open innovation, so how can we engage a crowd, and crowdsourcing. So not just about the actual selection of the idea or adding of the idea. We want to think about, are there diverse groups of people that can help develop those solutions out? Now, with motivations as well, the motivations for people wanting to engage in your crowdsourcing challenge will be different. And as we know, in running internal, external awards, of course, you know, it's great if there's a financial reward, but that's not typically the motivation as to why people will contribute. And certainly when we look to the outside world, there are lots of different motivations or incentives for people wanting to participate in challenges or challenge-driven innovation. So training and development being one. So with people who are perhaps internally looking at early stage careers, they want to be able to position themselves in their organization and be recognized by leaders as doing something quite outstanding. Peer recognition is another approach. So can I be seen as truly being able to be recognized as a problem solver in a particular field? And is there a personal satisfaction? So those are just some of the elements why people typically would want to contribute to your challenge. And as part of your challenge framing process, it's really to understand what those incentives are. Now, as an approach, and as I say, you can take this and run a challenge to any audience of your size, but typically when we're designing a challenge for an audience, we typically follow the same approach. So firstly is truly understanding what that goal or opportunity. So when we started today, we said, okay, we want to be able to innovate for a regenerative future. As different conferences are taking place around the world around sustainability, and we all have sustainability agenda. Our goal is, of course, how can we make our organizations more sustainable? But at going out to a crowd and asking that, you can imagine all manner of answers will come your way. So we want to take that goal and opportunity, and that's really the next part of the session, and break those down into specific challenges. So what is a very pinpointed problem or opportunity that we need to address to allow us to become a more sustainable organization? And there's probably a lot more than one, and there will continue to be challenges in helping to meet that sustainability goal. So really beginning to break those down into those portable units of work. The next step in a process is to determine who is the right audience for us to help solve this problem. Maybe internal, it may be external, it might be your partners, your suppliers, it might be a clinical research organization, it might be truly external, or as we see often now, it may be all three. So we often have instances where an organization is asking all three. It's internal audience, an open crowd, and an external to come up with solutions to a problem, to be able to determine, can we bring parts of different solutions together and truly think about this in the round rather than always coming back and getting the same answers. Running that as a crowdsourcing challenge then allows you to bring in some solutions, evaluate those, integrate those into your organization through a steady process, and begin to develop those out into a reality. Now, of course, I don't see if people have heard about the Netflix prize in the past, as Netflix similarly did this. They went out and they said, we want to be able to develop a better algorithm, and we're going to go to our traditional experts, of which there's a high probability that they'll come up with the answers, and non-traditional experts at the same time. And actually, in doing so, we're able to come up with a solution from non-traditional audiences that actually met their needs, allowing them to, I think it was a $1 million prize that some lucky developer was able to receive. But certainly take the approach of, let's go to people we know, but let's also look outside of our organization, combine both, and come up with a solution. So just before I go on, because I'm conscious I've gone to run through 5 slides and not stop for any questions. Has any questions popped up yet?
Nothing yet, B.
Okay. So in terms of why this approach and why taking a challenge-driven innovation approach can work for your organization is, first and foremost, allowing you to source novel solutions from unexpected fields. So as is the case of the Oil Spill Recovery Institute, to ensure that you can maximize on the return on investment and really reduce risk. So one of the benefits of taking this approach is, of course, that you're able to solve problems more quickly and more easily. Often is the case in our pharmaceutical clients who are coming to us, is actually you don't want to get to kind of stage 4 of your R&D process to realize there's a problem because of the cost of that to your organization. So can we pinpoint problems quite quickly, solve those, and really bring the cost forward and solving those further down the line and pushing that risk back. It allows you to discover new approaches and tools to handle different problems. So a different way of problem solving, and in doing so to create communities of research to promote a particular cause and demonstrate thought leadership. So organizations who come to us to be able to solve problems with an open crowd aren't just doing it from a problem solving perspective, it's also creating awareness of a particular issue, which we'll show you in a moment. When it comes to challenges, and as I say, I recommend that in any capacity that you run challenges if it's not something that you're already doing, versus doing an open bucket approach to collecting innovations, is that it allows you to really focus down and increase your chances of finding the right solutions. So when we're talking about what makes a good challenge and what makes it more likely for you to find a solution to that problem, we typically talk about 5 traits: that the challenge is limited in scope, that it's actionable, that it's specific, it's supported and owned. So take Lasso, if you're doing a challenge framing exercise, either in sort of after this call or at any time in the near future, is to be able to use this as a bit of a checklist to determine, is this the right challenge and am I going to get the best chances? So when we're talking about limited in scope, we're actually talking about, can we solve this particular challenge in a particular time frame with a person or a small team? So I wouldn't recommend that you go out and say, you know, how can we build a self-driving car? You'd focus specifically on an area which you know is going to nudge the dial. So it might be fast edge detection in video streams, for example. Like, how can we improve that component part of the problem to help us in a self-driving car? Would also recommend that you request actionable solutions. And when thinking about this, is actually, before you ask for the solution or the idea, what are you actually going to do with it once you get it? Have you got a plan in place? And have you got the right resources really to help you then implement the solutions? Because as I say, there's no shortage of great ideas. We see great solutions of ideas all the time. It just becomes a problem when organizations have too many solutions that they don't need to do anything with. And this approach can really help you find the right solutions. But also recommend that it's specific and focused. So actually people know exactly what's being asked in them. And in an example here, does anyone know how to do complex math in Excel? Isn't very specific. But if you were to do the fitting nonlinear sigmoidal curves using the Excel-based macro or add-on, chances are someone, certainly not me, would know how to do this. So let's look for solutions which are quite specific and be clear when we're asking our audiences for ideas what those are. So all challenges we recommend that you run as an organisation to really help tackle these problems, that they're supported and they're funded. I've seen an abundance of challenges which are fantastic and really important challenges go out. You've got great solutions, but it's not supported by the organisation, leaving whether it's your employees, your partners, a bit of a loss as to why they invested time in coming up with a solution, only for nothing to happen to it. So ensuring when you're thinking about your challenges that it's consistent with your company goals and it's backed by your management team. And again, before launching any form of crowdsourcing challenge to be able to help you address these goals, is ensure you've got someone, again, who is owning this. So of course, there's the support of the organisation at large, that we're not going to ask for something and it's going to be rejected. But actually, have we got it owned by an individual? Are they willing to take responsibility? And, you know, for example, what's the fastest, lightest laptop? A laptop determined by IT. Which browser is the fastest for my use? In that instance, you choose your browser. So let's just make sure that there is someone with a challenge who is that owned. So that leads us directly up to 10:01, so we're right on time. And what we're going to do is have a bit of a 5-minute break, and then in the break is organise into small breakout groups and taking just some of those reflections on challenges and how we can use challenges. We're going to be asking you as a group to build a list of problems, opportunities and roadblocks you've encountered which are preventing you today from meeting your sustainability goals. We're going to select one or two, so any willing volunteers, to talk about a particular problem in more depth and begin to understand what that problem is. So we're really at the front end of our challenge-driven innovation process of, we've all been tasked with the goal of coming up with a more sustainable future. We need to understand what some of those problems or challenges are and begin to break those down. And we're going to spend sort of 15 minutes doing a bit of a brainstorm facilitated by myself and one of my colleagues who's on the call. We'll be asking you a little bit more questions and then helping to identify a couple of problems out of that.
Before we do that, we have one question from Chris.
Yes.
Chris, if you want to unmute and ask me your question, please.
Yeah, sure. It was just a question about what do you do with all the sort of many ideas that don't make it, and the specific one that comes to mind for me was the Gulf oil spill. That there was a big call for ideas went out on that, and there were 43,000 ideas that were put into FEMA and people, and they only implemented 30 of them. So they were, what was it called, 42,970 ideas that were kind of binned. And there's an impact of binning that many ideas when you've asked for the call, and I've read some stuff around what it created around contributing to a sense of mistrust in government and the authorities. And I just wonder what you do amongst things to sort of make sure that what comes through, do you have to control the entry gate basically to make sure that what people are putting in does get into that space of something you can actually do things about? Because again, there's also a conflict there of, are you then excluding the people who you're looking for the very ideas from? It's a tricky balance. I just wonder how you manage that.
So yes, that's and to your first point around, so certainly with us and our open innovation challenges, dependent on what the type of challenge it is. So we do what we refer to as ideation challenges, which are more of a brainstorm, and then do more specific or focused challenges where they're actually looking for a solution. So in the case of ideation challenges, the organisation has the ability to use, because it's really an IP transfer, use any of the solutions and then make an award to the solutions that they want to actually take forward. But there is an abundance of ideas, and we would recommend to the organisations, because we ourselves don't own those ideas, is actually, can you make some of the solutions, both that you've selected and not selected, available for other people and other organisations to use, so they don't go in. And one of our sort of future endeavours is to be able to say, can we make this a truly open innovation marketplace? So solutions which aren't used by one organisations, are they available? And to your point around how do we ensure that there's trust, that's why the challenge approach is so important, is we really try to get down to that single problem with a solution where there's very strict criteria. So it isn't a shock when you throw kind of mud at the wall and realize that it doesn't stick. It's, you know, these are the specific requirements of your challenge. This is the actual problem we're trying to solve, so that we can manage expectations. So I know our government did this and made the exact same problem, but they actually did it with the budget and said, give us ideas on how you want to spend the budget. And it was as open-ended as that. So you can imagine the type of ideas that came into that challenge. And we all know voting at Voteface, what happens when you just ask for the crowd to do something at large. So our approach of challenges is really to mitigate that problem of people not having, not being surprised when the solution is taken forward, and hoping or encouraging organisations to make solutions that they haven't selected available to other organisations. And that's taken us up to 10:05, so we're probably going to be running 5 minutes behind, if that's okay. So it'd be great to regroup in sort of 5 minutes or so. We'll split in, and just as I say, from the output of the session where we're looking at those problems in a bit more detail, we're really keen to take one of these problems and then run it on our platform to be able to help find solutions. So it'd be fantastic, and we would encourage again that if we're sharing similar problems, that we can come together as different organisations, formulate around a single challenge, and then have the ability to repurpose that solution. Great. So that's all from me. So should we say, Zina, at 11 minutes past, we will regroup?
Perfect. Thanks, B.
Thank you.